Come with me to a magical place where being labeled the pork queen is a compliment, where being nice is just a way of life, and where all leaders of the free world must pass through. Welcome to Iowa. Whether you're a current Iowan, an Iowa expat, or an Iowan at heart, this show is for you. This is the Iowa Podcast. Real Iowans, real talk, no drama. I'm Justin Brady, and we're going to talk about kind of a serious topic today, but also a good topic. Burnsville, that's going to be our jump off point. Burnsville, obviously, our neighbor to the north, just had a really tragic incident. And so we're going to talk about policing. We're going to talk about Des Moines. We're going to talk about Iowa policing with none other than Chief Dana Wingert. Thank you so much for coming in the studio.
Thanks for having me.
So obviously a really awful situation, and I'm sure that the Des Moines Police Department was kind of thrown back to the day when Anthony Beminio, I have their names written down, Anthony Beminio and Officer Justin Martin were killed locally. I guess, first of all, any reaction to that? This isn't really a planned question, but what was the temperature with your officers?
Yeah, when that happened, we heard the news in Burnsville. I mean, it did take us back to 2016 because, those things, prior to 2016, those things happened across the country, and you saw it and it was tragic and it was sad and generally pointless, and you thought, thank God that could never happen here. And then it happened here. And then, it set you back and it was a tragic, very tough time for us. And now we see it happen in places across the country. We know how it feels, so your heart sinks, what they're going through. And it's just probably the worst point in a police officer's career to try and relive that. And, Burnsville's a nice community. Yeah. Very low crime rate. And you think, well, it happened here. I guess it can happen in Burnsville, too, which is sad. Yeah. And their neighbor, Burnsville's city neighbor to the north, Minneapolis, obviously made national news when they tried to. There was a vote, and it failed, thank goodness. But there was a yes for Minneapolis vote where they tried to defund their police department, which to me is just not probably the best solution. But thankfully it failed. But the problem is it failed. I had the number somewhere, but it failed only by, I think, 56% on memory rejected it. But you'd really expect like a 95% or something to reject a measure like that calls for defunding the police. So in Iowa is a little different. Like, we tend to insulate ourselves from some more national, what I would call negative trends, even economic ones. But are your officers seeing a rise in hostility or aggression against from Iowans? Are they seeing this? Yeah, in 2020, that took a lot out of us. We had a lot going on here in Des Moines. Not just the pandemic, but the social justice issues that came from the George Floyd incident. Right. We had protests, we had riots, we had disruption at public meetings. We had people blocking streets. I mean, we went through all that, even though we really had nothing to do with George Floyd. I mean, it was 250 miles north. And it kind of emboldened people to, have that mindset of, well, defund the police. Right. And they caught it at a time where what happened in Minneapolis was certainly tragic, happened at a time where people thought, yeah, I can jump on board with that. But the reality of it is that defund the police, that at the end of the day, if you really dig into it, if you understand the profession, and your community, you defund the police, that's going to impact the people that need the police the most. Some of those poor communities that we have, you take the police officers out of there, that doesn't help anyone. So it was kind of a silly battle cry if you really dig into it. And communities across the country that did it are regretting it. Yeah. And you're absolutely right. There's a lot of data to support that. We're absolutely going to get into that. But you guys and gals on the force have such I would say the spotlight is way brighter now. Like, you make one little misstep and it becomes national news in seconds.
And so how, from like I guess a PR or a public image standpoint, like we saw this video, I think, that came out last week of an officer hitting the ground and said, "Shots fired, I'm hit." And then he starts shooting into his own patrol car, and there's someone in there that's completely unarmed. Now, there is a backstory there. He saw a picture that was sent to his girlfriend that maybe he had a gun. He heard the acorn hit the top of the thing. He's an Army vet. And so I know from some of my friends in the Army that sometimes when you're taking shots, you don't hear the gunshot. You hear the impact of that round on metal. So, okay, there are probably a lot of facts around that situation. I don't know. But stuff like that, it like paints a very negative picture of our police force. So what do you do to combat that image?
Yeah. So one thing, when you hire, you have to hire character. I mean, you have to hire people that are, first of all, physically and mentally sound, and we test for that during our process. And then you hire character. You don't need to hire a super sleuth. You don't need to hire, a SWAT expert, or anything like that. You need to hire character, and then you can teach them how to do the job, how you want it done in your community. And you also cannot train death lurking around every corner. You just can't. Now, you can train how to be tactically sound, how to address certain situations, how to have situational awareness in all instances. But if you teach death lurking around every corner, now you become, militarized to the point where you can't do community policing, where you can't have those positive interactions, that we like to have in Des Moines, Iowa. So you got to hire character, teach them how you want the job done, and then you hold them accountable.
Where do you stand on the militarization of police? Because I truthfully can tell you, I don't know where I stand. I hear really great arguments for non-militarized and all this additional armor and tanks are unnecessary. But then I also hear from officers that are in barricade situations. They're like, look, what do you want us to do? Do you want people to just keep shooting up your neighborhood, or do you want us to control the situation and protect innocent life? So I hear both sides of this. Where do you fall?
Yeah. So, we had during 2020 and even a few still today, we have people showing up at council meetings saying, oh, they're buying weapons of war. They have military equipment. Well, we don't have any of that. We never have. We probably never will. We have equipment that we purchase for certain situations. Now, day-to-day operations, our officers are out there doing community policing. They're addressing crime issues, doing their thing like everybody expects that they would do. Now, if there's a situation where there is an armed barricaded situation or a hostage situation, we have equipment to handle that.
Right.
We have a SWAT team that trains for that, but that's not our standard course of business every day. That is a situational deployment with the personnel trained and the equipment to handle that situation, and that's it. You're not going to see our what we call the Bearcat, our armored SWAT vehicle, running radar on the freeway. It's situational deployment, to address the task at hand.
We're not going to see those rolling down with that's really funny. So you mentioned you mentioned earlier, hey, communities who have tried to pull back a police presence are seeing the results of that now. And so that makes me think of the removal of the SRO program, and that was back February of 2021. Now, my wife at the time was a teacher, so I'll be honest with you, that did not set well with me. She was at North, and she had Officer Sims there. And my interactions with Officer Sims were, I was watching him be chummy with the kids, giving people high fives, messing around in a good way with the kids. And from what I saw, and again, just a glimpse, but it was this amazing interaction he had with them. He was like one of the popular kids, which is crazy. So according to KCCI and Axios, so this isn't from KCCI in 2021, violent brawls have almost become commonplace. This is 2021. And this is after DMPS removed the SRO program. And then, according to Axios, in 2022, parents, students, and officers were saying that violence and fighting in the schools have hit a fever pitch. That's according to Axios. So right now we're at 1,714 injuries, 1,138 incidents of property damage, and 1,967 assaults in the 2021-2022 school year. after the removal of the SRO program, did things get worse for Des Moines Public Schools?
It depends on who you ask,
Yes, it does, but did it get worse?
Yeah. So you ask the teachers and some of the staff, and they're going to say, yes, we would like the SROs back. Yeah. And you got to understand that the officers, Jason Sims, for instance, Jared Underwood, who was at Roosevelt, he's a Roosevelt grad. I mean, these are folks, they wanted to be in the schools. Mm-hmm. I mean, they volunteered for that assignment. That was, one of their dream jobs as a police officer to work in those schools and work with those kids. It wasn't like we had to force them in there. They weren't they weren't an occupying force in the school. They were there because they wanted to be there, and they were doing great things. Depending on how each school handles it, they might say, well, our police response is down. Okay, well, are you calling the police for everything the police should be called for? What's your reporting mechanism? But we're still tracking our calls for service to the schools because of that. I thought it was really sad. There were so many good connections that were made in those schools. I mean, we had one of our police officers, Officer Mike Moody, who was actually a confirmation sponsor for a student that didn't have a confirmation sponsor.
Wow.
Things like that. Those are the untold stories. Now, in 2020, it was very easy. Again, here's the battle cry. The police are bad. Get them out of the schools. Pipeline to prison.
That's what they were calling it.
Yeah, yep. And then you do the research on how many kids that we dealt with in the schools and went to prison, and the number is 0. Okay, so
interesting. That's an interesting tidbit.
So the narrative makes no sense.
So you're saying of the students you actually interacted with, the data you have at least, 0 actually went to prison. So maybe, and again, I'm not an expert in this, but you're suggesting, or are you suggesting, I need to ask that responsibly, are you suggesting that those interactions kind of scared students in such a way where they're like, oh, actions have consequences?
No, I think the students understood that, between the police department and the schools, we could, whatever happened in the school, we can come with a suitable resolution. I mean, it might be mediation, not all those, very few of those kids got arrested. There's a way to work things out. What I'm saying is that battle cries, well, it's a pipeline to prison. Okay, well, show me the kid that's in prison because they had an interaction with one of our SROs. Right. And the answer to that is they can't do it, but it was very easy at that time, at that point in time, to make that claim, and people would believe it.
Yeah.
And the SROs were removed, and we did away with our SRO program, which is kind of sad because I think Des Moines is better than that.
Yeah. I mean, so you'd like to see that reinstated?
I think it would be good for everybody to have that reinstated. Now, it needs to be reimagined a little bit. What's it going to look like? How many? Because I'm not sure at this time we could put one officer in East High School with 2,000 students. Mm. We would have to work with the school district to reimagine what it's going to look like, what the ground rules are, who's responsible for what. But it could certainly be effective. I mean, some schools that have pulled them out are regretting that. A lot of districts, especially in central Iowa, stayed the course. And now they don't have to start over, but we would essentially have to start over in Des Moines.
I was talking with a school official who will go unnamed, but one of the things that was completely off this person's radar, because I was talking to them, please don't do this. Please do not end the SRO program. Again, we have listeners that represent a lot of viewpoints. This is just my viewpoint. But I was explaining to this person, I think they were saying like one person can't do all this stuff. One person's not going to prevent all these things. It's not even, and I was like, but one person is a critical communication channel that has training. And so a lot of crisis incidents are made worse when people call and they don't know how to report on a situation. If they hear shots fired, they don't even know what shots sound like. They're not trained. And so it's usually really awful communication, and your dispatchers really have a limited amount of information to go on. But when you have an officer in a building, they have that direct communication and training that tells them where the incident is this something that deserves a response? If it doesn't. So, I mean, would at least one officer per building, I think HS 675 is proposing this, right? would that be enough to bring, at least theoretically, bring down the bullying and the fighting and there are like more guns and tasers and knives being found in schools now? Would that help? Yeah,
certainly. The most important thing when, whether it be a school, it could be a neighborhood, could be at a business, the most important thing to handle in any situation is the first responding officer on the scene. Because now you get real-time information, you know what the situation is, you can direct the backup that's on its way, get the right resources coming. Having boots on the ground, having that person on site makes that so much easier. Right now, if the SROs, if something was happening, they could make that notification, get people going, I need you to come to the east door.
Right, sure,
but right now, the response is just going to be like every other response.
Delayed.
You could have 3 cars coming. They could be 15 minutes away, or maybe nobody's available to come because they're on emergency calls already. Now you become beholden to the 911 system. Is somebody available to come? Yes. Okay, great. But that answer could also be no. But if you have boots on the ground, you can have that immediate response. But equally important, you can direct the resources that you need to come, because when you have an officer on site, you have the entire police department at your disposal. You have a SWAT team if you need it. You have a detective bureau if you need it. You have a CSI team if you need it. You have everything you need to handle any situation that comes up. But if there's nobody present on scene, you're going to have to wait for that response. And sometimes, seconds and minutes are critical.
You mentioned something earlier. I don't remember how you phrased it. I can't live rewind, unfortunately, but you mentioned you mentioned something about if the report even gets to us at all, or if we even hear about it. Are there more guns and drugs being brought to school? And are you being essentially kept out of that loop, at least in Des Moines Public Schools? Because obviously that's where you operate.
Yeah, I would like to think that the school's on board with us for the guns and drugs. And everybody wants their school to be safe. Yeah. We're certainly going to get notified if there's word of a gun in the school, and we get those calls now. And we work collectively with the administration to address that. The drug thing, we still get called to the schools if they find drugs, if they take drugs off a kid. We take control of those because, well, essentially we have to, because we have to account for them. And, we get audited by the DEA, to make sure that those are handled properly. Some of the other things that maybe don't rise to that level, I would never know if we're still getting those kinds of reports. The one thing that people fail to recognize is the vast majority of the situations that SROs handled in the schools were at the request of a school employee or the administration. Like the officers weren't lurking around the school, looking for somebody to shake down or take to jail. That's at the request of a school official who understands that this conduct is disruptive. We're not equipped to handle it. We need our SRO over here to, the West Hallway.
So the SROs were being called and requested by staff or students or principals. You weren't going around and doing this on your own. I mean, in some cases, if something happens right in front of an officer, they're not going to say, well, I got to ask the principal first. But in general, they were being called to certain areas by staff.
Exactly. And, if there was a fight in the school and the SRO saw it, obviously they're going to break it up. We're going to try and find the instigator of this fight, and then you can work with the school officials to figure out how they want to handle it. Some of that depends on the victim too. I mean, it could be like, no, I'm good. I really didn't get hurt that bad. You can mediate that and move on down the road. Or you might have parents show up and say, no, little Billy got his face punched in and I want charges filed.
Yeah.
So some of those we don't have a lot of discretion on, but most of those, the vast majority of those incidents, we were called to those. We were asked to address those. And in some cases it works very well with the school administration. And there were times where it appeared to me that the administration was just wiping their hands of it. And, this is on the police department. Well, that's not a partnership. That doesn't benefit anybody. That doesn't help the situation. It doesn't help the the school. It certainly doesn't help us. So a true partnership, you have to work together, and there's got to be accountability on both sides.
Yeah. Were those teachers that were, I just wonder, I mean, there's probably no data on this, but I just wonder if you know, were those teachers who were calling and the administrators who were calling your officers and reliant on them, did they speak up when the SRO program was ended, or were they silent? Because I know that at that time there were some very loud, aggressive voices, and those very loud, aggressive voices did cause some people to maybe hold their tongue.
Yeah, and there were some very vocal people, so during that time, I kind of saw this coming. I saw what was going on across the country, and I kind of had a flavor for the superintendent at the time and some of the school board members. So for fun in my free time, I was watching the school board meetings.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
And you had people on both sides of this issue, and the people that were against removing the SROs, when you looked at who they were and what they did, they were in the schools. Like they knew what was going on in the school. And they wanted the SROs there. Some of the other talking heads on the other side of the issue were people that were never in the hallways.
So the people that were removed wanted them out. The people that were in there seeing them operate wanted them in.
Exactly. That's kind of what we saw. And then there were a lot of people that did remain silent because, again, that was a point in time where, if you spoke up and you were on the wrong side of the issue, in somebody's mind, here comes the cancel culture. And that was kind of sad because, you don't get honest feedback when people are concerned about, well, if I tell them about this is what's going to happen to me. Right. So, but I think that pendulum has swung back a little bit. And in Des Moines is a little different. We have a ton of good people in this town. I think everybody wants the same thing. I think we're a more reasonable community. Now, not everybody's going to agree with me, and I'm not going to agree with everybody else. That's fine. But I think in Des Moines, we can have honest conversations about tough topics and come to a solution. In other communities, it was just, people don't like this, we're getting rid of it. Defund the police, get rid of the SROs. I mean, a multitude of social issues that have set Minneapolis back decades, San Francisco back decades, Seattle, Portland. I mean, the list goes on and on. Baltimore. It's like, how do you recover from that? In Des Moines, I think we made some changes. I think we're a better community in a lot of ways, because of what happened in 2020. But for the most part, we stayed the course. We didn't fly off the handle and make snap decisions that would have lasting impacts. And I think
even though that's what a lot of people wanted you to do.
That's it. Yeah. I mean, well, in 2020, there was a couple council members that spent nearly a year trying to get me fired. For not for not jumping on board. I'm going to read.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
I mean, you could probably go back and watch the council meetings and figure out who it is. But 2020 was a wild year.
Are they still on the council?
No.
Okay.
But just when they want to jump on board with what everybody else was doing, when I know, after over 3 decades of working for the Des Moines Police Department and being involved in this community, I know we're different. I know we're better. We don't need to do that. We don't need to jump on board, and be a follower. We can be a leader. Let's not make Des Moines into something that it shouldn't be. And I was very proud of our community because we kind of, short of the SRO thing, we stayed the course.
It looks like that might be coming back. I don't know if you have any insider information on if that contract will be renewed. Have you had discussions with, new Mayor Connie Bozen? Have you had discussions with public safety? Are they wanting, the school board, are they wanting to put this back in place? There's a new superintendent now, obviously. What have those discussions been like? Yeah,
I've not talked to Dr. Roberts about it yet. I have had several conversations with him. Mayor Bozen, Des Moines Public Schools is near and dear to her heart. I mean, she spent a lot of years on the school board. We haven't had any formal conversations about that. We've discussed it in passing, but it would require us sitting down and essentially redoing the entire agreement.
Right.
Which certainly isn't impossible. I mean, we can get it done. It would just it will look a lot different, I think. which is okay as long as it's still effective.
Sure. So one of the things that is a concern of people, and I think that it would be helpful for them to know if we do that here, is sometimes you see these videos of bad cops, because there are bad cops, just like there are bad people in any occupation. You do your best to weed them out, but there are bad people in every occupation. But we see sometimes videos, and I don't think I've seen any Des Moines police issues, to be truthful. There's no there's no gotcha comment here at all. But we do see the videos of bad cops, and then we look through the history, and it's like, well, they've had a history of this. They've done this multiple times in that department. They got fired from 2 other departments for doing this stuff. And a lot of people are like, why is that allowed? So at least in your department, is there a process to weed those people out and prevent them from ever working here?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that, we started doing as an administration when I took over as chief, because, it seemed like, okay, you passed all the testing and it's extensive, and you get to the academy. It seemed like, okay, if you made it to the academy, after 24 weeks, you were going to graduate. Those days are over. We weed people out in the academy that we don't think maybe operationally they aren't good enough, tactically they're not good enough. Maybe this job just isn't for them, because it's not for everybody. So we weed them out while they're in the academy before they get out in the public and in our community having those interactions. We have an accountability system in our building that is, in my opinion, second to none. I've dozens of people no longer work at the Des Moines Police Department in the 9 years that myself and my administration has been running it.
So the axe comes down quickly if something happens.
It does, because, our community has expectations. We have expectations. If you can't meet those, okay, you don't get to work here. Another big piece of that is there's new leadership at the Iowa Law Enforcement Academy, which provides our certification. We have our own academy, but our certification comes from them. The leadership out there in terms of decertifying officers, that miss the mark, in egregious ways, they'll decertify them so they can't work as a peace officer in Iowa.
Got it.
So,
interesting.
The profession itself as a whole in Iowa is taking a hard look at, okay, what do we want? What do we want our law enforcement to look like? How do we want them to act? And if you can't meet that mark, you're just not going to work in Iowa. And we've looked at this, as a Chiefs Association, as the training center of ILEA. You look across the country, there are horror stories in some other states about fired from here, goes 10 miles over, gets another job in another agency.
There are.
Everyone from line officers to police chiefs, getting fired and doing the same thing. We can't have that in Iowa. We just can't. And the good thing about Des Moines and Central Iowa and the chiefs and leadership in Central Iowa is we talk to each other every day. So if I get rid of somebody or some other agency gets rid of somebody, don't think you're going to leave DMPD and go to West Des Moines, because
stay away from this person. They're bad news.
We're gonna talk.
Interesting.
Because we realize that one bad apple makes us all look bad. Yeah. I mean, look at the George Floyd incident.
Yeah, it's true.
I mean, that impacted law enforcement across the country.
Yeah.
So
I don't really worry about that as like a podcast host, right? If another podcaster says something stupid, no one cares what I say. You know what I mean? It doesn't reflect poorly on me. But you have one individual in Idaho that does something dumb. Everyone's like, fire Chief Wingert. I would imagine that's what happens.
That's exactly what happens. I mean, everybody gets painted with that same brush. Right, wrong, or indifferent.
Yeah.
And that's why you need your individual organization to be better. You need to be able to stand up and say, we're not like that, and this is why.
I want to talk about recruitment here in a second, but real briefly, where do you stand on like the record the police thing? Because I would imagine a transparent police force is like, yeah, go ahead and record us as much as you want and share the recordings with us, or publish them as much as you want, because these days, there's essentially 24-hour surveillance of your officers doing stuff around the city, which I'd imagine for someone like you keeps them accountable. So where do you fall on that?
Yeah, so that happens all day, every day. Yeah. And our folks are used to it. I mean, there's no profession that has, the level of accountability that we have.
Yeah.
I mean, they have body cameras.
They have body cameras too, yeah.
They go to work. They're being recorded every minute they're at work. We know where they're at every minute because there's 3 different levels of GPS, between the squad car, the computer, their body camera, the police radio.
Their body cameras even have GPS in them too?
Absolutely.
Wow.
We can account. We can account for where every officer is right now at any given time. No other profession does that.
That is crazy.
So the fact that some knucklehead, when we do a traffic stop, wants to stick a cell phone up and record us, our officers really don't care. They've figured this out. Okay, if that's really what you want to do, but it'd be easier if you just had our interaction, you could move on down the road and you could get the recording that we have.
Right.
So
right.
I mean, it's very strange. People think that's like, insulting or, take that, you want to stop me. I'm going to record you. Our officers really don't care. They're professionals.
On your website, you should do like a competition. The person who records the best DMPD officer interaction gets like a gift card to Starbucks with that officer or something. I think that'd be kind of funny. I don't know, if I encourage people to record the police. Say if you get a really good clip of us doing something great, we'll get you a $25 Starbucks gift card. I mean, that would. So I said 30 minutes. We're at 40 seconds. Can I ask you about recruitment? Do you have just a couple more minutes? Is that okay? Because I do know that you're a busy guy. So I know that recruitment, at least in other parts of the country, is down. It's more difficult. And you're telling me that you're trying to weed out officers in the academy, unlike maybe you have a more finer tooth comb than perhaps you did in the past. Is it harder to hit staffing levels here? Are we at staffing levels? Are there concerns of having a low police force? And how do you recruit?
So for whatever reason, we're holding our own here in Des Moines. And I think kind of central Iowa across the board. Other parts of the country really struggling. There was the last class that we graduated from the academy, I think it had 22 officers in it. At that same time, Minneapolis PD, which is about 5 times the size of us, they had 14. So
wow.
I think what your city is all about has a lot of impact on whether or not people want to be police officers there. San Francisco really struggling. I read an article that in 2023 that they had a total of 26 new officers. That's crazy. I mean, because that's a huge police department in a very big city.
I can't. You said this was San Francisco had 26 officers?
Yeah. So we're.
I was down there in one of the main areas, and like this Main Street, whatever, I don't remember the name of the thing. And I didn't see a single officer down there, but I did see people doing heroin on the street at noon. I'm not kidding. No officers anyway. So I'm sorry, continue.
But they're down hundreds of officers and struggling to hire. If you only hire 26 in a year, I mean, in a city that size, you got a problem.
Wow.
But for whatever reason, we're holding our own. I thought 2020 would be tough, when there was that kind of anti-law enforcement sentiment out there, and I get it. I don't agree with it, across the board. We didn't really have anything to do with most of that, here in Des Moines, Iowa, but we're still getting quality recruits, and our focus kind of has been the homegrown talent. A lot of the kids that, went to area high schools, maybe Simpson, Grandview, young adults like that are joining on. We're having really good luck. We're holding our own. We, after 2020, in the midst of a pandemic, we had our 2 biggest classes ever. I mean, we had over 30 officers in back-to-back classes. So I think people still understand the value of it. I think people still have that mindset to serve. We've just been very fortunate. I was very concerned. I really was. Our entire building was like, oh, how are we going to pull this off? But we talked to some of the experts in the field. At that point in time, I'd been to a function. I think it was a Des Moines Partnership dinner where I watched Bankers Trust get an award for small business minority recruiting retention, and then I watched Wells Fargo get the large business award for the same thing. And I met with their HR staffs and said, okay, what am I missing? What are you doing that give me a tip, give me a trick, because I know how we always do it, but you got something going on here. And they're like, their comment to me was, you don't have to go to, St. Louis or Kansas City or Omaha to try and find people to come here and work because, if they grew up in those communities, they can work in those communities and do the same thing. Mm-hmm. They said, focus on your homegrown talent. Find the people here that know Des Moines, that love Des Moines, that want to raise their family in Des Moines. Focus on them. They're easy to get. They're all over the place. And when we start doing that, it was pretty incredible the response we got. Like right now, we did a kind of an informal survey of, Des Moines Public High Schools, like our current employees, which schools leading the league in police employees. And it used to be Lincoln High, far and away, back in the 90s. And now it's Hoover High, dozens of employees. You can just name at all ranks from assistant chief, down to police cadet. But that homegrown talent, that's kind of been our little niche, because if you have a good police department, you have a professional police department, you're involved in the community, you meet those people. And after a while, you develop those relationships where they're like, you know what, I'll sign on for that. I'll be a part of that. So I think that's what makes Des Moines different. We're the best kept secret in the Midwest, in my opinion. We have a great community with a ton of great people in this town. And I'll stack Des Moines up against anybody. I think we're just a great city.
Police Chief of the Des Moines Police Department, Dana Wingert, thank you so much for coming in here. What is the website if people do want to get in your recruitment pipeline, if they do want to get involved, or if they want to understand more about what Des Moines Police Department is doing? What's that website? Yeah,
you can go to the City of Des Moines website, or you can go to the Des Moines Police website. All the recruiting materials are in there, what the requirements are, what the pay is. We'll be graduating academy in a week.
Wow, okay.
And we'll be starting the next one, starting the next hiring process. So it's kind of we're always continuing to hire, but you can fill out that information now, get your name on that list. We'll contact you. But if you want to be a part of a good organization in an award-winning city, Team DMPD is a place for you.
Really appreciate you coming in here. Thank you so much for coming on the Iowa Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
And to my fellow Iowans, Iowa expats, and Iowans at heart, thanks for listening and subscribing to the Iowa Podcast.